relations is the totality of human interaction with man's interaction with fellow human beings and with even other non-human objects, with even animals. So the core mandate of the public relations profession is the promotion of mutual understanding, cohesion, harmony, unity, and stability among the humankind. It is just about communication, effective communication, so that everything moves smoothly. The public relations profession, therefore, is about relationship building and relationship mending where it cracks. That explains why we are out to ensure that we don't fail in the discharge of that responsibility. And as a people, I must tell you that as a Nigerian, I'm not very happy with what obtains with our relationships at the moment. Relationships between the component parts of the country, relationships between the governments and the governed. And if you remember that this country, the relationships in this country have seen better days. When we were growing up, we actually grew up into a country that was relatively one in which we all felt at home, whatever part of the country we happened to find ourselves in, not necessarily where we came from. In fact, we made friends across board without asking questions as to what God they worshipped, what ethnicities they belonged to, what geographical accidents happened to be their places. But today, this kind of scenario seems to be history. When you sit your children down and telling them that this was the kind of country I grew up into, they look at you with some element of disbelief. They think that you are just painting a utopia to them. But the truth of the matter is that it has happened, and we believe as public relations people, we owe a duty to the society to ensure that we push the society into retracing its steps, ask itself the necessary, even if difficult questions as to where did we miss it. So then probably since it has happened before, we are not reinventing the wheel. It has happened before. Maybe we can retrace our steps and go back to those good old days. And I think it is doable.
So how has the NIPR been able to come up with the task of rebuilding the nation?
Yeah, what we are doing at the moment, we have gone far. Last year, you know, we secured the mandate of the members of the Institute for a second tenure in office in Bauchi last year.
Okay.
And as soon as that election took place and we were returned, we sat down, took a look at the Nigerian society and realized that communication was breaking down, which was actually affecting relationships amongst the component units. And knowing that there is no problem that communication cannot solve.
Oh, absolutely.
We said, well, as public relations people, what do we do to contribute our widow's mite of expertise to ensure that this country, number one, realizes the fact that it has nowhere been where it is today at the moment. Because with the kind of endowments that God has blessed us with, both human and natural, we ought to be up there competing with the best. Yeah. But we always seem to be a potentially great nation. Because of what? Because one blessing that God has endowed us with, we have failed to look at and see it from the perspective of a blessing. We have continuously tried to sit it on its head. We have continuously sought to actually turn it into a curse rather than the blessing that it was meant to be by God. What is that blessing? The diversity with which God has created this country in terms of topography, in terms of humanity, in terms of geography, in terms of so many other assets. Rather than harnessing those diversities with everybody bringing their God-given endowments to the table, so that out of the variety that God has created us, we are able to blend and come up with one national thing. We have been actually busy sitting at our comfort zones, hurling invectives at one another, playing holier than thou, believing that I am the only saint, every other person is the devil. I think we cannot get it that way. Smart societies have always built themselves in a manner that they ask Akin to bring to the table the endowment that God has blessed him with. They ask me to bring my own, because every human being you look at, this is, I mean, it's not rocket science. Every human being you look at, however much you consider him lower than you in whatever indices, but if you take a critical look at them, you would see that they are endowed by God in a way that you are not. So, so every human being has something that they can offer.
Yeah.
Every human being. And they have something that they can offer that you cannot. Just like you have something to offer to that they cannot. So what do you do to be mutually beneficial to one another? Everybody brings their endowment. We all have our weaknesses, but when we bring our endowments together, they make up for our own deficiencies. But here we sit down, and especially these days. I mean, if you remember those days, when you were making friends in those days, you didn't want to know what God. You didn't want to know what God they worshipped. You didn't want to know what part of the country they came from. You didn't want to know what ethnicities they belonged to. This was because relationships in those days were better. But it is now, they say, to thy tent, O Israel. Everybody is on their own, and we seem to be groping in the dark. And that has made us to become perpetual prisoners to nostalgia. We always have fond memories of yesterday, because no conscious effort is made by us.
So what has been the success story?
Before I come to that, I think one thing we need to really understand is we have to free ourselves from the shackles of that imprisonment to nostalgia. Every generation must consider it a sacred duty to ensure that it makes its best effort to ensure that it bequeaths a better society than the one that it inherited, rather than sitting to reminisce about yesterday and think how beautiful it was. What effort are you making to ensure that tomorrow will be better? This was what made us come together and decided the best thing to do, NIPR, the best thing to do is, since we are professionals in relationship building and relationship mending, and we possess the requisite skill, we possess the requisite neutrality, we could offer Nigerians a platform that enables them to come together, sit around a table, discuss. Of course, if you ask any Nigerian, they will tell you they know what the problems are. So we said, since we all knew what the problems were, we were not coming to ask what the problems are. It is a solution-driven initiative that we called Citizens Summit for National Integration, Peace and Security, which we started since last year. Of course, we went around the country. We did the geopolitical zonal levels where the NIPR, in conjunction with 70 other...
I remember we had one in Lagos.
Oh, yeah, that was the southwestern...
Which state was also part of.
That was the southwestern version of it. We actually, with the northwest in Kano, then we went to Port Harcourt for south-south. We went to Jos for north-central. We went to Gombe for northeast. We then went to Enugu for southeast, and we rounded up the 6 geopolitical zones with the one in Lagos for the southwest. And of course, we had the 7th zone too. You may be wondering what the diaspora, because they are Nigerians, and we realized that when we begin to project ourselves so negatively every time we're talking about this, we're talking about that. I'm not saying we shouldn't be truthful, but let us try to emphasize those things that make us tick, so that the world will know that it is not all bad about us, that we have some good elements, we have some good success stories to tell. That's why we went for
Which is not unique to Nigeria alone.
Yeah, it is not exactly. So we went to the diaspora, and we had our zonal dialogue series with them around June, July. Everything culminated with the grand finale that we had in Abuja 2 weeks ago, where all the zones came together and others.
The grand finale.
The grand finale, yeah, and the aggregate opinion of each zone was brought to the table. Now we are in the report writing sequence. But one thing I want to tell our people that was quite interesting that we came out with from the consultations that we had while we were planning the summit. You know, at some point, if you sit down, rather if you sat down and be analyzing stories that were coming in, you would think that everybody wanted to go separate way. No. We discovered that there was not a single part of the country we went to for consultation where we were dismissed. There was, we didn't go into any place where we ran into a closed door or a closed mind or a closed heart. Everywhere we went to, we were embraced, we were welcomed. Everybody was asking, oh, you guys, we've been looking for this all this while. Where have you been? This is something that we ought to do. But the other thing is that there is a lot of frustration in the land. There is a lot of anger.
I was about asking you,
yes,
what were the missing gaps?
The missing gaps is that people are angry that leadership has not actually fared very well in bringing us together. Leadership has not done well in harnessing our God-given potentials. Leadership has not any particular leadership.
Not tapping enough into the resources.
Exactly. Leadership has the entire gamut of leadership and across time, not any particular leadership. You understand? So the belief of the people is that there are certain things that ought to be in place that are not in place. And if those things were put in place, even the sky cannot be our limit. We would have been up there competing with the best.
So as are going to assist Nigeria in this?
It's not about it. Is assisting ourselves. It is a self-help thing that we already have kickstarted it. Okay. It is a process. It is not a one-off event that has happened 2 weeks ago and you will hear no more about it. No. It is a process that we have started. In fact, as a first step, we are giving this process a 10-year period. To see how far we can go. It's a long-term plan. It's a long-term plan, so it is not about Mukhtar Serajo's tenure.
Not a quick fix.
It's not a quick fix. We can't afford a quick fix. We want something that can be sustained. It has to be sustainable. It has to be honest. It has to be objective. It has to look at the country and come up with measures that will make whatever solution we arrive at endure. So it is a 10-year thing for now. In fact, I'm sure at the end of the 10 years, whoever is there is going to have to renegotiate some other period. We are trying to write the report now. Once we get the report ready, we'll go back to government. We made sure that we were independent. That was why we had a tough time getting finances for the program, because there were certain quarters that we felt we must not go to so that the integrity of the process would not be compromised.
Okay,
you understand? Otherwise, so many quarters wanted to hijack it for other reasons. Yes, politicians and even government. But we felt we needed to maintain that independence, that neutrality, so that our summit does not end up as one of those fora that had been had before and whose reports are now gathering dust in various shelves.
How are you engaging the civil society organizations?
Very, very well. Like I told you, from day one we realized that NIPR as a body, as a single body, could not, it was something that we could not handle alone. So we began to consult, and by the time we had the summit, we had gotten the support of 71 other organizations.
Really?
Yes, both civil, religious, socio-cultural, youths, women, governmental, academic. I mean, we had the support.
The market people.
Well, everybody.
Artisans.
Everybody was involved. I tell you 70. And the sociocultural groups, Afenifere, Ohanese, Arewa Consultative Forum, Niger Delta Forum, Middle Belt Forum, Northern Elders Forum, you name it, including those that you felt didn't believe in this country, wanted separation. No, when we met them, we were actually encouraged by the words that came out from the mouths of their leaders. So we realized that all the noise you hear, all the cacophony, all the agitation that you hear taking place is a product of the frustration that people are suffering from. But deep inside their hearts, people love this country and they want it to succeed.
Well, I want to thank the NIPR for this. This task, how has it been resonating with government?
I must say, unfortunately, I believe, you know, the first step towards solving a problem is acknowledging its existence. I don't want to come and whitewash and tell a lie here. Okay. I believe government should have done better in the way it actually engaged with us. We felt when we started that this was something that should be welcomed by any government, because we were talking integration, we are talking peace, we are talking security. So any government worth its salt was supposed to have keyed into this, because it was something that it should have done in the first place. But of course, there is a trust gap between the government and the governed. If the people cannot trust, give the kind of trust that the government ought to have, the government should have leaned on anybody or entity that has that relatively enjoys the trust of the people. But I want to tell you that in the course of preparing for this summit, yes, there were some governmental agencies that really did very well for us, but governments generally should have done better, both federal and state governments. I believe they should have done better in the way they actually engaged with it. I think they didn't.
I hope they are not perceiving, they don't have the perception that NIPR is political.
Oh, they should have engaged with us. They should have engaged with us and put the difficult questions to us. They would have known where we were coming from. And like I told you, this was why we didn't even want to be seen with some quarters, so that we don't get politicized. NIPR is a professional body that has people that have allegiances to virtually all the political parties that you have in this country. But when we came together for this summit, we came together for Nigeria. Nobody was talking of your allegiance or support for this or that candidate, this or that party. We just felt, we tried to get across to the Nigerian Governors Forum. We met a brick wall, I must report. The federal government, well, the office of the SGF, the DSS, the NIA, some agencies of government really cooperated, but government as a collective, I think, should have done better, and I believe that as we continue to engage with them, they would see the sincerity and the honesty in us and give us a better chance to...
This is your image, your public relations program on TV. This is a public relations conversation with the CEO, and I have as my guest the President, Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Malam Mukhtar Sirajo, Fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, and the Chairman, Governing Council of the NIPR. Well, I want to put you to task. I just asked you, was the Institute perceived as a political entity that is not making government to... Well, I remember the state government here in Ogun, when we were to be in Lagos, they did support us. This particular station gave us support. They were able to even come to the venue to even carry the event, and great things were done by this station. And that's why I really wanted to commend OGTV for their impact in the way they've been promoting public relations.
Well, of course, I had been following this program itself. It is always viral. And when we met in Lagos, I was at the southwest variant of the summit. I saw OGTV. What I said, I didn't say that government didn't participate. I said the participation should have been better. And when I say government, I don't mean any particular government. Maybe the government, they have to suffer the liability of being a government among so many other governments. But I believe that when issues of integration come up, government should take it more serious.
What is the perception
we need to be more united.
Your image program?
Very, very beautiful, very positive. It is a relationship building process too, because it engages the public, tells them more about public relations, tells them more about communication, engages CEOs and other movers of the society to communicate to their various publics what they want the publics to understand. I think it is a beautiful and innovative program.
Thank you very much. My special guest is Malam Mukhtar Suraju, Fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Chairman of Council of the NIPR, and we're talking public relations. This program has been able to engender national unity, mutual understanding, great effort in communicating